Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at a Zeitengewehre 71/84 bayonet. These are often referred to as a model of 1871/84. Now it is a Imperial German bayonet. I don't have an Imperial German flag, so the modern German flag is going to have to suffice for this video. This bayonet was originally designed for the Mauser model of 1871/84 rifle. That said, though, it will fit the M71 and the commission model of 1888 rifle as well, or the Guerra 88. So pretty much all of the rifles from the 1880s made in Germany, this bayonet will fit. It's a pretty interesting bayonet because it's actually the very first knife bayonet that was developed. So prior to this, we had monster sword bayonets and spikes and sockets. So this is really what sparked the modern knife bayonet, and there was only a crossover between long bayonets and short bayonets of 65 years. These days they're all short, and prior to this they were all long. Anyway, these were made by various companies in Germany. So you got all the usual suspects in Zollingen and Suhl, and about 1.1 million of them were made in total. On top of that, there are also a bunch of export versions made, including this one here. And they're made by OEWG in Austria, or now known as Steyr. It's not clear how many of those were made, and they were all made for contracts in South America and China. You can spot an OEWG one or Steyr one by the Austrian markings on it, but these bayonets were only made for a couple of years, between 1886 and 1889, so 3-4 years of production, not very long. Now, a little bit of history. I love the old Imperial German bayonets. They're very hard to come by down here in Australia and very expensive when they do pop up, unfortunately. But essentially in 1871, the Germans developed their first metallic cartridge rifle. Prior to that, they were using the needle-fired Dreyse. So they had the model of the Mauser model of 1871, and that was a single-shot rifle and had a relatively long bayonet. And they used that for quite some time, and then in the early 1880s, like the rest of the modern world, Germany started looking into repeating firearms, and they were particularly interested in Albert Kropatschek's design of the tube magazine bolt-action repeating rifle. So in 1882, there was a trial. They got a number of rifles, I think it was a couple of thousand even, and issued them to a couple of units, and the trial went reasonably well. Emperor Wilhelm himself was, or Kaiser Wilhelm himself was quite impressed, and he attended a bunch of the trials. And it was formally adopted in January of 1884. That's why it's known as the model of 1871/84. The bayonet, which is the one we have here, was named the Zeitengewehre 71/84. So when you refer to these bayonets, generally in the English-speaking world, we call it a model 71/84. But in Germany, they're referred to as Zeitengewehre, or SG 71/84. Now, production began in 1885, and they weren't issued to troops until 1886. They weren't used for a terribly long time, though. It was only a couple of years later, in 1890, that these bayonets here were actually replaced, and they were replaced by what they replaced. So Germany went back to the 1871 model bayonet, and that was in response to France with their Lebel rifle. So the Lebel was a reasonably long rifle and had an extremely long bayonet, and the rifle and bayonet together had an overall length of 180 centimetres, and that was a full 30 centimetres longer than the Model 71/84 rifle and bayonet together. And this is back in the day when the idea of the longer bayonet is going to win the fight. The thought was that the longer bayonet will stab the enemy first and leave the shorter bayonet dude deader quicker. So, in response to that, the Imperial German infantry units replaced all of their 71/84s and went back to a model of 71 bayonets, which had a length with the rifle of 173 centimetres. So, still a little shorter than what the French had with their Lebel, but not too far off, and a lot closer than 150 centimeters. That being said, though, that was only the infantry units that replaced them. After 1890, many units and even the Navy, the German Navy, kept using these. From what I can tell, the Imperial German Navy used them all the way through until 1918 at the end of World War One. So they were still in service throughout World War One. And this style of bayonet was still used by medical corps, machine gun crews. I'm not sure if artillery or not, but they were used by bicycle and medical corps as well. So, and Zeppelins. Pretty much anyone who would prefer to have a shorter bayonet. It's not essential. They're not going to be doing a lot of bayonet fighting, or they're not expecting to anyway. These were still issued to colonial forces. So a lot of the colonial forces used a lot of the stuff that Germany didn't necessarily want to use themselves, or all the obsolete stuff. So they would issue to colonial forces the model of 1871 rifle with the 71-84 bayonet. So the B grade rifle and the B grade bayonet as well. But I'll pull it out. We'll have a look at the construction. I should have pulled it out by now. This one's a bit unique because it's got a bit of a darker blue to it. Generally, they're a bit lighter. But as I said, this is a Austrian one made for export to either China or South America. So having a look at the blade, very standard Mauser style blade, but you've got to remember this is the very, very first one. It's got a nice deep square fuller running down both sides, flat spine, small false edge, long true edge. It's not terribly sharp, but I wouldn't say it's blunt either. So it's not a bad little blade, considering the age too. A nice short little crossguard with a muzzle ring and a wooden handle with a bit of a distinctive shape to it. So you see it's sort of got these two dips in the top, and that's really iconic of this bayonet. There's a lot of different Mauser bayonets out there, and they can be quite confusing and quite difficult to tell which is which. But I find those two divots are generally a dead giveaway for a 71-84. And then we've got the handles that are just held in by two rivets. And moving down, it's got a pommel with a push button. And as I said, I don't know why Germany went to a short-bladed bayonet. I haven't been able to find that information. As I said, it was the very, very first of the knife bayonets, and I really don't know why they did that. I've done some reading, I've done some sleuthing online, asked a few knowledgeable people, and I haven't got an answer yet. So if you know why they chose a shorter bayonet, please comment below. I would love to find out. But a couple other interesting things about the design. The very first versions of this bayonet still had a leaf spring. So it didn't have this sort of internal spring push-button system that you have in all the modern bayonets. Those leaf spring ones are incredibly rare. There weren't very many made, and they sell for quite a premium. I've never come across one. Hell, I haven't even found a photo of one yet. But I've read quite a few accounts that a few were made, and they are out there somewhere. In terms of sawbacks, so Imperial Germany and Germany during World War One had the philosophy that roughly 6% of all bayonets will have a sawback on the back of the blade, and it seems that these bayonets were kind of the exception, other than Bavarian units. So bayonets that were issued to Bavarian units did have sawbacks on 6% of the blades, but it seems that the other states or provinces didn't worry about it. So that's a little bit interesting right there. Taking a look at the scabbard, you'll notice it's got a steel construction scabbard. Having a look at the mouth, the blade only goes in one way, and it's got a very standard frog stud and ball finale down the end. There's no drainage hole, and I can't remember, is there a spring inside for retention? There certainly is. Certainly there's a spring in there somewhere for retention. I think it's running down the spine, actually. So there's two different types of scabbards out there. The scabbards that were made by Germany or German companies were made of leather, and they had a steel or metal chape and locket. So top and bottom, with leather running down the centre, and stitching on the underside. Generally, a lot of your leather scabbards don't hold up too well, don't over 140 odd years, so you don't find too many of them in great condition. Certainly not down here in Australia, but I've seen plenty of fantastic examples online, and hopefully one day one of them will find its way over to me. The other type of scabbard is what we have here, which is the steel construction, and that's what you find made by OEWG or Steyr. It's quite sturdy. This one does have a little bit of a dent in it, unfortunately, and I don't think I'm going to get my hands on a mandrel to get that out, which is a shame. There was one other type of 71-84 bayonet, and that is the dress bayonets. So dress bayonets are generally private purchase. They're made commercially available, and they're usually chromed up. Generally, they're not functional bayonets. They won't fit to a rifle. The mortise and the button might be only for show. They might not fit on the bayonet lug, and the locking mechanism might not work at all. Generally, they're just ceremonial only. They're nice and pretty, and they sit on your belt. But there's a few of them out there as well, but I haven't come across any. I've only read about them. But that's kind of the construction of the entire bayonet. There's not too much more to go over. I might jump into the markings. So there's two different kinds of markings. I'll go over what we have here first because I can show that to you right now. So as I previously mentioned, this is a Austrian OEWG or Steyr variant. So you know that because it has the OEWG logo on the ricasso. And then it'll also have a serial number on the crossguard. And those are the only markings you'll find anywhere on the bayonet. You will also have an OEWG marking on the frog stud, if that will focus. Don't make a liar out of me, please. There you go. But again, they're the only markings I've been able to find anywhere on this. Now, all the versions of this bayonet that were made in Germany, they have all of your standard Imperial German markings. And if you're familiar with Imperial German bayonets, you'll know that there's quite a few. So you'll have your manufacturer on the ricasso, and generally they'll be the name of the manufacturer at the top and then the city of manufacture down the bottom. So you might have, NF Horster at the top and Zollingen down the bottom. That's a pretty common example. Then on the pommel, just above the press stud, that's where you'll find your proof marks, and there's a range of different proof marks you can get. Then on the spine of the blade, down here, you'll get your property stamp. Now, later Imperial German bayonets, the property stamp will have a number on it, which is the year of manufacture. For these bayonets, the number that you'll find there, 87 or 88, is not a year of manufacture, it's a date of acquisition. So that's the date that the bayonet was entered into German service. It might have been manufactured prior to that. But above that, you'll find a W for Wilhelm I or II, being the Kaiser, and above that you'll find like a little crown or something like that. But those are the markings you'll find that are pretty much out of the factory. On top of that, you'll also have regimental markings, and that's for the unit that the rifle and bayonet are issued to, and they'll be the same across the bayonet and the rifle. They'll be matching. Because this is an export version, I don't have the German regimental markings on it. However, putting this aside, what I do have is a French chassepot bayonet that was actually captured by the Prussians during the Franco-Prussian War in 1871. And because this is a captured bayonet, I have regimental markings on the crossguard. And these are very typical of regimental markings that you'll find across all Imperial German bayonets. So you'll notice the first two numbers there, 28, that's the regiment number. Next to that, you got LI. I can't remember what that stands for. That's like an abbreviation for a reserve battalion kind of thing. It's like land infantry or something like that. I can't remember what it is. And then next to that, we've got a 1. That's number 1 company. And then to the right of that, we've got 177. That's rifle number 177 in the 1st company of the 28th Regiment. So that's how you read the regimental markings. And you'll find those both on the crossguard, and you'll find them on the scabbard as well. And they will obviously be matching if you've got a matching one. So I put the chassepot away. So generally you'll find them across the crossguard and across the scabbard. So those are pretty much all the markings you'll come across on these. I really enjoy the old Imperial German bayonets when you get them, because there's just so much you can learn just by looking at the markings. I really enjoy that. But anyway, these bayonets were in service for a little while. Generally they were replaced in just after 1898 with the introduction of the Guerrero 98 rifle and all the bayonets associated with that. Like you got the 98 Quillback bayonet, the really long skinny one. You got the 9805, which came in a few years later. And of course the 8498, which I've got here. So I've got another video on the 8498, but essentially it's just a more modern version of what we're taking a look at today. It was made for the Kar 98K, or all the K98 rifles, or the 98 rifles. So the early versions, there's 3 different variations. This is the very last, like a World War II vintage. But the early ones are essentially what we have here, just no muzzle ring. Some of these were actually converted to the first pattern of the 84-98 bayonet, but the 71-84 is absolutely the inspiration for the 84-98, which is a very, very sought after and very collectible bayonet. Put that one away. So very cool little bayonet. I really, really want to get my hands on a German one with regimental markings. I think that would just be the coolest. Probably one of my favorite bayonets at the moment as well, just because of the interesting history behind it and how influential it was on modern bayonet construction. Like these days, you can't get long bayonets anymore. Every bayonet is essentially like a little field or combat knife, and this is really what started that trend. Even back in the day, this immediately started a trend around that part of the world. Like you got Austria were making the model 1886, 1888, 1895 bayonets, and they were all little knife bayonets. The Swiss were influenced with their 1889 Schmidt-Reuben. It just influenced a whole bunch of countries, and I find it very, very cool. I'm not doing a great job explaining how much I really like this one, but definitely one of my new favourites. It wasn't until a few months ago, but it's flown out in the front. Anyway, guys, if you know anything more about this bayonet that I've left out or missed, or any errors I've made, please comment below. I'm committed to learning as much as I can, and if you know why these were made so short, please, 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 please message below. And if you've got any links or anything like that, feel free to share. I find that very, very interesting. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching and have a good day.